Next we will be creating the legs for Barry the Bear. You will be needing both your ivory and your main color in order to create the legs and feet. We'll be starting off with our ivory yarn. As always, we start with a slip knot first, and then we are going to chain 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to make an increase in the second chain from the hook. So that's 2 single crochets in the same spot. Next stitch gets a single crochet on its own. Last stitch of a chain gets a 4 single crochet increase, or 4 single crochets made in the same spot. So that's the second one, third one, and fourth one. Next stitch gets just a single crochet, and then your last stitch, which is also your first stitch, gets another increase. And this brings you to the end of round 1. For round 2, we're going to start with 2 increases. So stitch number 1 gets an increase, and stitch number 2 gets an increase as well. Stitch number 3 is just a single crochet on its own. The next 4 stitches will each receive an increase. So that's increase number 1. Next stitch, increase number 2, next stitch, increase number 3, next stitch, increase number 4. Then we make just 1 single crochet on its own. You'll find you now have 2 stitches left in the round. Each of those gets an increase. So that is increase number 1. And in the final stitch, we make increase number 2. And we then add a shift stitch, which is just 1 single crochet in the next stitch to make things line up nicely, and we put our stitch marker into this shift stitch that we have created as the end of round 2. For round 3, we are going to do an entire round of slip stitches all the way around. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to make a color change, and we want the color change to be smooth from one round to the next. The slip stitches is the first step in this process. So how you do that is you go into your stitch, you hook your yarn, you pull it back through your stitch and through the loop that you've already got on your hook. That's your first slip stitch. Go to the next one, pull your yarn through the stitch and through the loop on your hook. That's your second slip stitch. Then we go to the third one, go through the stitch, hook the yarn, back through the stitch and through the loop on your hook. So you can see that is how we create our slip stitches, and you want to make 1 slip stitch in each stitch of the round. Now it's important that you don't pull too tight on these slip stitches. So when your stitch is on the hook, you don't want to pull it tight, you just want to give it a little bit of breathing room there before you make the next slip stitch. You want to make sure that you keep your slip stitches all the same size. For some people it's easier to go up a hook size when they create a round of slip stitches, so you could use a 4mm hook to make your slip stitches, or even a 4.5mm hook, and that will help you to not pull them too tight. But you would only use that hook size for this one round while you are creating your round of slip stitches. You can see the slip stitches end up lying nice and neatly on top of your work, creating a nice little frame for the shape you have created so far. So almost there, just got 2 left. There we go. Make our final slip stitch. Put the stitch marker back to indicate the end of round 3, and we are now going to cut our yarn. We don't want a long tail, so we're just going to cut a short little tail like that. Put our ivory yarn to the side. When we come back for round 4, we'll be using our original main color. Okay, round 4 is a critical part of our color chains. We start by putting our new main color on our hand so that the short end is on our palm side. We then pick up our piece and we grab this short end of ivory yarn and we combine it with a short end we're holding on our palm. We are then going to hook the taupe, which is our main color, and we're going to just pull it through the stitch that we've got on the hook like that. Now, once you've done that, you're going to hold on to your piece. You're going to find your short ivory end and you are going to pull that tight, and you'll see the stitch actually disappears in as you pull it tight, so that you've only got your main color yarn sticking out on the hook. I then chain 1 to give us a little bit of height. Now, don't forget that you've done this chain 1 in the beginning when you get to the end of a round. That does not count as a stitch, it is just for height. Next, we're going to do a new technique where we work in the back loops only. Now, if you look at your slip stitches here, each V is a stitch. Now, the loop furthest away from your body, that one, is the back loop. The loop closest to your body, this one here, is the front loop. We normally go through both loops to make our stitches. At this point, we're not going to go through both loops. We're only going to go through the back loop, the one furthest away from our body, and we're going to make a round of single crochets, 18 in total, just through those back loops. So you actually go into the V instead of under the V when you're working in the back loop for your single crochet. So it's just your entry point that changes when you work back loop only. You can see the front loops are forming a bit of a line there because you've left them behind. That is exactly what we want, that bit of a line happening there. So you just keep going all the way around to make your 18 single crochets, each and every one of them in the back loop. Now, we're working in the back loop first off to help us with the color change, to make it look nice and smooth, and secondly because working in the back loop allows the leg to fold in more sharply. So it's not a gradual turn in like when we create a bowl shape for the head. Instead, it's more of a sharp corner. Not exactly a 90-degree, but think of it as more of a 90-degree corner rather than a curve. You can see we're coming towards the end now. That's number 17. Take out your stitch marker and make number 18. That brings us to the end of round 4. As you can see, it's gone all the way around, and this little line of front loop stitches is now visible all the way around, so it gives you a nice neat little outline of the bottom of the foot. For round 5, we're going to make 18 normal single crochets where we once again work through both loops of a stitch. Just remember, in round 3, you started off with a chain stitch, which I told you is not a part of your stitches. So you want to skip that chain stitch and you want to make your first single crochet into the next stitch. If you forget this part, you're going to end up having 19 stitches instead of 18. Once I've made it, you can see it's creating a little bit of a bump here. So I go to the inside and I just grab my short ends that are there and pull them tight, and that makes the bump go away. So that was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, which brings us to the end of round 5. And as you can see, our color change over here is now nice and smooth, and it doesn't actually really look like we've changed from one color to another. This is a method that you can use on any color change where you want your stripes to be even rather than having steps. Round 6, we start off with 3 single crochets. That's 1 and 2 and 3. We then got a pattern in brackets which instructs us to do 1 single crochet followed by a decrease, and to repeat that 4 times. So we make single crochet number 1, and over the next 2 stitches we make decrease number 1. We then make single crochet number 2 followed by decrease number 2. Going to make single crochet number 3 followed by decrease number 3. Single crochet number 4 followed by decrease number 4. Oh, there we go. See, my ends are getting a little bit in the way there. Just hide them there. We finish off with 3 single crochets. It's 1, 2, and 3, which brings us to the end of round 6. For round 7, we start off with 5 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are then going to make 2 decreases. So that's decrease number 1 followed by decrease number 2, and we're going to finish off the round with another 5 single crochets. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which brings us to the end of round 7. For rounds 8, 9, and 10, we are going to repeat the same pattern of making 12 single crochets. So 1 single crochet in each stitch that we've got already. So that's number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Brings us to the end of round 8. For round 9 we are repeating this, doing exactly the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Brings us to the end of round 9. We're going to repeat this one more time for round 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now at the end, okay, that's it. Round 12, we just finish. We don't do a shift stitch for this one. That's the end of round 10. Before we carry on with round 11, we are going to be stuffing our leg. Same as we did with the arm, we want to stuff the foot part very firmly, but we want to leave the leg part unstuffed. The difference here is that your opening should be big enough to allow your finger through. So just use your finger to push the yarn nice and firmly into the foot section. You can see that's this part here. But you want to make sure that it doesn't come all the way to the top. You can see my entire nail section of my finger can actually fit in there with no stuffing whatsoever. So that part of the leg is not stuffed at all. We leave that empty. So once you've done that, you have completed the stuffing of the leg. Round 11 will be the final round of the leg, and for this round we are simply going to make 6 decreases. So stitch 1 and 2 becomes a decrease, stitch 3 and 4 becomes a decrease, stitch 5 and 6 becomes a decrease, stitch 7 and 8 becomes a decrease, stitch 9 and 10 becomes a decrease, and our final decrease will be made across stitch 11 and 12. Now we finish off with a slip stitch in the next stitch. If you want to sew your legs into place at this point, you need to leave yourself a long enough tail to do the sewing. If you're going to create movable legs like me, you can just snip it off short, like that, and pull it all the way through. We then want to close up this hole that we've got at the top, so we just put our yarn tail on our tapestry needle like that, and we weave it in and out around the opening. It's the same as we did with the body. Pull it tight, go in the center, come out of a random stitch, and snip off the yarn tail. And that leaves you with one completed leg. Now you need 2 identical legs in order to make Barry the Bear. So you need to repeat this section again to create your second leg, so that you can have 2 of them at the end in order to attach to our bear. See you back when you've made your second one. To attach the legs to Barry the Bear, we are going to use the same technique that we used on the arms, meaning fishing line and a giant needle to create movable limbs. First, we need to attach our legs. To do that, we are going to put them to the side. We want to achieve approximately the same height that we've got with our belly button for the top of our leg. You also want to check from the side, like that, because you want to line up your leg with your arm and your ear so that everything forms a nice line for you. Once you're happy with your positioning, you pop in pin number 1, followed by pin number 2, to have your leg nicely on the side, like that. We want to do the same thing on the other side for our second leg. So we want to make sure that we get the same height, top of the leg by the top of the belly button. I want to check that it's the same distance. You've got to have your arm in the straight down position when you're checking this. There we go. Pin number 1. And pin number 2. Now, before you carry on, check your positioning. You want your ear to line up with your arm, which lines up with your leg. When you turn it to the other side, you want your ear to line up with your arm, which lines up with your leg. When you look from the front, you want to make sure that your belly button remains in the middle between the 2 legs. When you look from the back, you can see that this knot where you tied the belly button off is between the 2 legs. You also might want to check from the bottom. Now you can see here that the bottom of our foot is an oval and mine are pointing sideways when we actually want it to point forward like that. So in order to achieve that, it might be necessary for you to just take your pins out and slightly twist your leg before repinning it into position. And you'd want to do the same with the other leg. Take the pins out. There we go. Sorry, that is my Chihuahua deciding to bark at the local Labrador. Guys, calm down, please. When you check from the bottom now, your oval should be pointing forward, and when you check from the side, you'll see that the bump which creates the toes of the foot is pointing to the front. Very important, make sure that this little bump is pointing forwards, not backwards, otherwise your teddy will look very odd. So at this point you've got everything in position as you should have it, and we can then start attaching it with our fishing line and our giant needle. We're again going to start at the back, this time a little bit lower on the bum for our entrance point, working to the left, come through the leg. Again, it's about 2 rounds from the top of the leg. Pull through, leaving a tail of the fishing line sticking out the bum. You then want to enter into the same hole that you came out of, and you want to push your needle all the way through the body of your bear, out the other side, through the second leg, like that, so that your needle's going all the way through. And pull it through. Remember, you want to make sure that your tail stays out and that the fishing line disappears into the leg and doesn't get caught around anything. You then repeat this by entering in the same hole and sticking your needle straight through the body to come out on the other side. Through, turn over and repeat in the same hole, through the whole body, through the leg and out on the other side. Pull through. For me, that's enough repetitions. If you want to make it a bit stronger, you can go again. So I go back in the same hole and then I come out in the back where I started. Just make sure which hole that is. Oop, not that one. There we go. Pull through. Remember to leave your pins in place the whole way through to keep your legs where they should be. Take a hold of your 2 ends. Do your first tie and pull tight. Remember, you want to pull very tight to create a nice looking result. Once you're happy with how tight you've pulled, you can tie a second time. And a third time. And a 4th time, at which point I snap it off short. You can now remove your pins and your legs will stay in place, as you can see. And you will now have legs that can move to take your bear from standing into a seated position. There we go. So that is our movable limbs for the legs. See you back shortly for the tail.